welcome back to Pia Talks. We are back talking evil things. Season 1, Episode 3. Part 1 is Evil Eye, Part 2 is The Addict. But before we get started, please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to hit the notification bell so that you can always be notified when I post new content, and hit the thumbs up. Alright, on to Evil Eye. So in Evil Eye, we're following a lady named Lindsay. In 2015, her parents got her a trip to Europe for 2 months. Her father says that it was a gift for her getting into law school. However, she believes it was a gift because she needed to think outside of the box. Her father wanted her to get out of her comfort zone and live a little. So I was thinking, 2 months in Europe alone, that would freak me out. It totally would. 2 months in Europe, amazing. With a friend. Okay, by myself, oh no. Anyway, she ends up over in Romania and she meets a really nice guy named Alex. Her and Alex hit it off. They're at a bar type restaurant place. She says that he was one of those people that you instantly felt at home with, you felt at ease, and he was one of the only Americans that she had had contact with since she had gotten to Romania. So she really enjoyed spending time with him, and she decides that she's going to take a ride on his motorcycle. Well, she gets on his motorcycle and she's wearing a hat. The hat flies off of her head and she turns and reaches for it. Lindsay wakes up 7 days later in a hospital. She has no idea how she got there or what happened. It wasn't until later that she realized what happened. She reached for that hat and it threw her and Alex off balance, and their motorcycle veered into another lane and they were hit. Alex unfortunately did not make it. She lost her cornea by a piece of glass that flew into her eye, and she ended up having a replacement cornea surgery for her left eye. She stayed there until she had some decent healing, and then she went back home to try to pull her life together and to get back to law school. Lindsay really felt as if the accident was her fault. Had she not reached for that hat, her and Alex would be fine. He would still be alive, and she was carrying a whole lot of guilt, plus trying to deal with her surgery and getting back into the groove of law school. And things were fine at first. And all of a sudden, day 196, she's at the school library doing a little studying. She's the only one there, and she decides it's getting a little late. She needs to put her books back. So she walks over to put her books back, and all of a sudden the power goes out. The next thing you know, all these books fly off the shelf, and she has absolutely no idea what the heck is going on. But she says she blows it off. Books fall off the shelf. I am at the library quite often. I love the library, one of my favorite places. I have never, ever been at the library and a whole bunch of books flew off the shelf. Never. Anyway, she says that she decides to just overlook it. She's going to go collect her things and go home and study. As she is collecting her things and walking out, she sees an older gentleman above her on the breezeway of the library looking down on her. But she is the only one in the library. So she takes off running, and then she says, I'm going to call the cops. Well, she calls security. Security searches the entire library and finds no one. So she's starting to think she's stressed out. She's studying so much. She's tired. She's obviously seeing things. However, it scared her enough for her to say that she's going to start doing her studying from the house. One night she's at home studying, and her roommate is getting dressed to go out. Her roommate goes out. She studies so much and so long that she falls asleep on the couch. Then she wakes up and she hears a noise. So she's looking around for her roommate. She thinks her roommate may have stumbled in drunk or something. She goes to look around the house, and that guy, the old man that she saw at the library, is standing in her hallway. No. Who the hell are you, old dude? No ma'am. Okay. Her roommate comes home right after, and her roommate says, what is wrong with you? What's going on? And she tells her that It was the same old man she saw at the library. Her roommate thinks she's absolutely ridiculous. She says there is no way that some old man you saw at the library followed you to our house and now he's in our apartment. No, you're just seeing things. You're going crazy. She says maybe it's your lover from Romania. Maybe he's come back to haunt you. And that, as tacky as that was, really upset Lindsay, and she started thinking about Alex and feeling depressed about him being gone again and thinking he would be around if it was not for her. So she starts to think, well, what is really going on and what's happening? But again, she brushes it off. She says, well, I'm really tired. I'm sleepy. It has to be that. The next day, she gets up to take a shower and she looks at herself in the mirror and her eye is bleeding. Her left eye. She freaks out completely and she goes running into another room and she looks in the mirror and nothing is wrong with her eye. So she goes to her local doctor and she asks them to, run all the tests, check her eyes, see what's going on. And her doctor informs her that there's absolutely nothing wrong with her eye. She figures she must be losing her mind. She figures something is wrong with her. She has no idea what the heck is going on, but she needs to understand what is going on with her. So she goes home, and when she gets home, this happens.
I saw somebody get shot in my house right in front of me. I called the cops.
No. No. What? Okay, so no. She runs out the house, which is what I'd have done, but I wouldn't have came back. She comes back. She runs out of the house, right? She calls the police. She tells them that she just seen somebody get murdered in her apartment. The police run into her apartment and nothing. No gun, no blood, no body, no nothing. The police think, ma'am, are you serious? I'm thinking that the police think she might be on that stuff. Like, ma'am, there's nothing in here. So she is totally out of it by now. Now she has no idea. What is it? What is happening? What is going on? Like, she is completely freaked out. Freaked out to the point that in March of 2016, she hops a plane back to Romania. She says, I'm going to get to the bottom of this because this is ruining my life. So she flies back to Romania and she has a conversation with that doctor who performed her original surgery. She wanted to know who was her donor, what is going on. And this doctor, of course, tells her that he can't tell her, number one. Number two, that she has got to be crazy because there's no way her getting somebody's cornea is causing her to see things or have their memories, because memories are stored in her brain and she didn't get a brain transplant. So he's talking to her like she's crazy, right? But, wouldn't we? I mean, really, if somebody told you this was happening, wouldn't you wonder, ma'am, are you on meds? Have you fallen off your medication? Yeah, no. Maybe you should get on some medication. I mean, you wouldn't really take her serious. You would think she was absolutely freaking out and losing her mind, right? No, ma'am. She insists that this man tell her who the heck her cornea came from. And he told her.
It took some convincing.
You have this man's cornea.
And it was a man that had been in a Romanian prison.
I've seen this man. Who is that?
Your donor murdered his father.
How did my donor die?
Execution.
That is a no-go. Listen, Lindsay flies back home, okay? Lindsay has that cornea removed from her eye and she tries to get a new cornea. They did implant a new cornea in her eye, but it did not work. It did not take. So she is officially legally blind in her left eye now. However, she has not had any more paranormal activity happen to her, and she has been able to move on with her life. I tell you what, if I was in that same situation, I don't know. Maybe I would have, Absolutely, I would have had my cornea removed. I can't deal with this. I cannot see this man's memory. He was a murderer, for goodness sakes. I'm all right. I'm all right. I don't need him and his memories. I can make my own. Yikes. Can you believe it? Whew, poor Lindsay. Next, we have the addict. Now, this story was a little much. I was completely shocked. So, this story is a story of Tori and James. Tori and James are married, and they moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 2005. Day one, they're in their house. There's an addict in their house, and her husband believe that this addict has a whole lot of potential. It's pretty big, and they can turn this into an in-law suite so that when their parents come to visit, they'll have their own place. They'll have their own little nook where they can be, perfectly comfortable. So James has decided that he is going to fix the place up. While he's upstairs working in the attic, he realizes that there's a wall that was just built in the attic that makes no sense. And he's thinking, I'm going to tear this fake wall down and it will make more room for this suite. Once James gets the wall torn down, he finds 5 boxes behind the wall. And he's thinking to himself, well, who would board up an entire wall just to put some boxes behind the wall? He opens up the boxes, and it turns out they're perfectly labeled, dated VHS tapes. Now me, I'm nosy. I really am. But the fact that these tapes were behind a wall, I'm going to throw them out. Yeah, we're going to throw those out, okay? But no, James didn't throw them out. While James is upstairs tearing down the wall and pulling out the VHS tapes, his wife Tori is downstairs making dinner. She turns around and notices all of a sudden the kitchen window has a huge crack in it. And it wasn't just one line crack. It was like a pattern of cracks. And she says that she was nowhere near the window and she didn't hear any noise at all. Just pure cracking when she turns around. And I thought, that's odd. But then again, so is finding 5 boxes of perfectly labeled and dated VHS tapes behind a wall. When James finds the videotapes, he lets Tori know that he found a whole bunch of, VCR tapes with dates on them. And she tells him he should throw them out because who wants to watch old family movies for people who are not part of your family? And James tells her, he wants to hold on to them for whatever reason, ridiculous, but he wants to hold on to these tapes. For some reason, that same evening, James was not able to sleep. Now, he says that he always sleeps. He's never had one night where he couldn't sleep. But that particular night, he absolutely could not sleep. He said that he went ahead and grabbed the first box of VHS tapes and he starts watching them. 3 hours later, he is still watching these tapes. Now, let me tell you what's on the tapes. The tapes are of somebody stalking and watching someone. These tapes are of a guy standing outside of a woman's house, video recording her every move. And James continues to watch these tapes. And on the show, James says, I shouldn't have watched. I should have stopped. You think? Now that's odd for me. That's a strike for you, James. Why are you watching these tapes? After watching these tapes for over 3 hours, James decides he's going to go ahead and go back to bed because Tori, of course, is in bed asleep. She has no idea what James is up to. When she wakes up, James is nowhere to be found. She says that this is weird for her because never once in their entire relationship has James ever woken up before her. So when she wakes up, she asks him, what are you doing up? What's going on? And he says, oh, I'm just upstairs working in the attic. But he wasn't. He was upstairs in the attic watching those VHS tapes. Tori says that she noticed that he was acting weird, but she felt that he must have been under pressure because he needed to finish The Addict so soon because her parents were coming into town for the holidays. So she thought maybe he felt the pressure of home ownership and remodeling The Addict. On day 3, Tori was home alone again, and she was just saying that being home by herself is really difficult for her because the house just didn't feel right. It didn't feel comfortable. She didn't feel safe and at home in the house yet. And being home alone was really difficult for her to be peaceful. However, when James was home, James spent most of his time in The Addict. And Tori was thinking, is he avoiding me? Is he really up there working on The Addict? What's going on? She didn't want to be a bother to him, but at the same time, she felt that he was really just spending way too much time up in the attic. Now, my problem is she never went up in that attic to find out what he was doing. There is no way that I would have been all right with this dude being up in the attic 24/7. Come the hell down there. And not only that, the whole time this dude is in the attic, there's no work being done. You don't want to just go up there and find out what he's doing. How's the work coming along? Because he was not doing any work in that attic. James says that he became addicted and obsessed with watching those tapes, and he has no idea what overtook him or overcame him, but he was not able to stop watching these VHS tapes. While he's upstairs watching the stalker tapes, his wife is downstairs being accosted by a ghost.
What's going on?
There's someone in the house.
Nope. By the time she finished explaining to James what was going on, I would have had my shoes and my purse and I would have been gone. I don't have time for this, James. James searches the entire house. He tells her that the alarm is still on and has not been activated. The doors and the windows are still locked. It's impossible that anybody had gotten into this house. And do you know what Tori said? She said, well, maybe it's my contacts. So you felt somebody touch your face and seen a woman walk off in a black long dress and it was your contacts? I don't know. I don't know what kind of contacts those are, but I don't think so. Nope. Day 4, James tells Tori that she's going to be home alone because he has to go to work. But not only that, he also has to go to dinner after work with some new clients. And she's very upset by it because she's afraid and she's scared and she doesn't feel good in the house, but she has to deal with it. So she drinks some wine, watches some TV, and she falls to sleep. James comes home from work and doesn't even bother to wake her up or tell her he is home. He goes straight up to the attic to watch his VCR tapes. Over the last 4 days, James has watched 50 hours of VHS tapes. 50 hours! When he gets to the last tape in the first box that he's watching, the guy is no longer standing outside watching the woman. The man is actually breaking into the woman's home. He is upstairs in the attic watching this video where this guy has murdered this woman. While he is up there watching these videos, his wife is downstairs yet again, scared. Out of nowhere, her entire body starts to get cold and she freaks out and she's downstairs looking for James, but James is upstairs watching this video.
Who's there?
I could feel a pair of ice-cold hands holding my ankles and dragging me.
It turns out that this guy had murdered 5 women. Each box of tapes showed a different woman and the progression of the stalking to the murder. The guy was already in jail for burglary and he was about to get out of jail. But thanks to James calling the police finally and turning over the tapes, the guy has been sentenced to life in prison and he will not be able to get out. Tori has divorced James, so they are totally not together anymore. And she's moved back to Pennsylvania, and James is still in Wisconsin. I don't really blame her for divorcing James. James was a little too much. You know, throughout the show, he kept saying that he should have stopped watching the tapes. When he realized what it was, he should have turned him over to the police right away. But he didn't. And he says that he feels that his body was taken over and he couldn't help but watch it. Yeah, the only thing that's good about this is that that murderer was captured and he will be spending the rest of his life in jail. He claims that he doesn't remember doing any of these murders, though. Tori and James have not experienced any more paranormal experiences since they turned over the tapes and divorced and moved on with their lives. Yeah, no. I think it's a good thing that James watched the tapes because the guy was about to get out of jail and I would have thrown the tapes out. But I also think it was a horrible thing that James watched those tapes. And yeah, that was too much. And then they never did clarify who was the woman that was coming to her and touching her and scaring her. I have no idea. But I'm glad that she's safe, and so is James. Anyway, until next time, bye.